I'm Jennifer Byrne, and I'm not going to labour the introductions for this woman who's our guest this evening because, one, she says she doesn't like it, and two, because it's completely unnecessary. We all know who she is, or at least we know her work, and have for the best part of 30 years. In fact, I've got to say, you live in, I think, in the collective psyche, and every one of us here, I suspect, have different things that we remember. For me, it's the sound of, it's either the click of bicycle wheels in a summer or the smell of chlorine. For some, it may be that crisp, starched white sheet that is a Garner thing that we've inherited from us. So, this is relevant because what I would like to start with actually is asking you about something you wrote yourself in The Feel of Steel, where you said, "I hate writing. Writing is a sickness, a neurosis, a mania."
Yeah, what about it?
Bad day, bad year, or you really meant it?
At that moment I did, yeah. And I do have moments of feeling that, yeah.
Why a neurosis?
Well, I wrote that just after I'd split up with my third husband, and I realised that I was really no good at marriage and should give up all attempts at it. So I was feeling...
But you didn't say marriage is a mania or a neurosis.
No, I didn't.
It was writing.
Yeah, well look, you have to work your way around in a subtle way onto these things. No, but
Does it grip you like that?
I have had periods where I felt that, yeah. That neurosis is... Well, it's a strong word, I suppose, and it's a word with a lot of negative connotations.
I would have thought you'd say it's a passion, it's a driving need, it's a source of great joy.
Here's my
I gave you all these
nice
things about sheets and...
Hold on a minute.
Bicycles.
I brought this book because, look, this is the Paris Review interviews, which I don't read interviews with writers as a rule because I don't know why, but I just don't. But I was hoping I might have a chance to quote something from Philip Roth, who I love and admire. He says here in the middle of a rather long and terribly interesting interview, this is, by the way, if you want to read it, it's in volume 4, which I think has just been published. He says, "Writing for me isn't a natural thing that I just keep doing, the way fish swim and birds fly. It's something that's done under a certain kind of provocation, a particular urgency. It's the transformation through an elaborate impersonation of a personal emergency into a public act." And I thought, that puts a finger right on it. That's and I particularly love reading Philip Roth speaking about his writing because he moves between first and third person in an incredibly masterful way. He doesn't give a shit, basically. He really just wades in there. If any time you pick up a book by Philip Roth, you open it, and on the first page, I read this somewhere, I'm quoting someone, I don't know who, someone said you can just hear this big engine turn over. And I find that so awe-inspiring and wonderful.
When it ticks. But I think Tom Keneally said that when it's going right, or at least you think it's going right, he said it's like a state of ecstasy.
Ecstasy.
No, too much? Down on the ecstasy?
No, not ecstasy.
Up on the functioning engine?
Well, no, even the fact that there is an engine going in your own writing is... That's not ecstatic. No, I don't think I've ever felt ecstatic when writing. It's too hard work, it's hard work. Yeah. I've had moments of thinking, wow, did I really write that? Something appears on the page that I didn't know I thought, or it's as if sometimes your unconscious gets past your kind of severe intellect, which is judging everything you do harshly. And something slips past it and suddenly there's this lovely image on the page and you think, where the hell did that come from? But, it's nice.
Are there ever times you can't write? With you're distressed or you just haven't got the inspiration, you just can't write? Because you seem to write all the time.
Yeah, but I'm not writing anything at the moment and I'm... No, I go for quite long periods without writing things. I write something every day because I write a diary.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, so I enjoy that, and that I suppose is, well, I was about to say neurotic, but...
You've already said that.
Yeah, but I've got these great crates of them and I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I burnt them, all the ones I wrote up to the year 1980. They're all gone. So, and I'm so glad. I haven't had a moment's regret.
Really?
Yeah.
But could you imagine a day when you didn't write in your diary?
Oh yeah, occasionally I just I get too busy. Yeah. But when you live by yourself, a diary can stand in for the person who says to you, "Oh, how'd things go today?" You know, I haven't got anyone who asks me that. So when I go to bed at night, I think, well, I'll just write down how things went today. And I also have an urge to make a note of the weather for some reason.
The weather?
Yeah. Well, it's quite hard to write about the weather, interestingly.
It is.
Yeah.
It is extreme. That's why I'm so surprised you tried.
No, but it's not like I sit down and think, now, how can I make today's weather interesting? I think, well, I'll just write about the small events of the day, and one of the events is, the temperature of the air or just how the wind felt when you opened the back door first thing in the morning, and things like that are interesting to me. And writing, I always write down dreams, but I don't. Lately I haven't been remembering all that many. But that's a great challenge, to write down a dream, because it's not that you need to remember it so much as that it's just some fleeting thing that goes flying past, and it's a discipline to kind of grab it and try to articulate it, I think.
Do you, can you reread your books?
With pleasure, you mean?
At all?
Yeah, sometimes. The one I like the best is the Children's Bark. I mean, I read the Children's Bark, I think, I didn't write that. Somebody else wrote that. Some happy person wrote that. And sometimes I go back and read. I wouldn't sit there and read page after page.
No, but a lot of authors actually say that they don't or won't reread their books.
Oh, there's some things that I wouldn't, or that I would find painful to reread or embarrassing.
Yeah.
Where I know that I was clumsy or that I was writing for the wrong reason, or in some kind of deluded state.
Deluded state?
Well, thinking I was hot shit for a moment, thinking, yes, of course I can write this, I'll just dash it off. I've already written X other books, and then I look at the thing and it was awful, and I don't know why someone didn't say, do not publish this book.
Do you think that happened more earlier or later in your career?
About middle.
Middle?
No, about 3/4 of the way through. You see, now, these days, you always imagine that writing's going to get easier, but it doesn't get any easier. In fact, it probably gets harder. Because you're not sure if you're repeating yourself. You don't want to be a bore. And of course, that's another thing Philip Roth said. I'm glad I brought this book. He says, he's talking about getting stuck on a book, and he couldn't solve the problems of a particular book that he was trying to write, so he sat down and tried to write another one, so just to keep moving. And he said, it was as though I were blasting my way through a tunnel to reach the novel that I couldn't write. Each of one's books is a blast, clearing the way for what's next. It's all one book you write anyway. And when I read that, I was like, oh God, he's so fantastic. I mean, most people don't, he just lets it all hang out when he talks about writing.
That sounds so, when you hear it, you think, yeah, but is that really true? It is all one book? I mean, you particularly, you've...
Yeah, me particularly. It's one book.
The book of Helen?
The book of what I make of the world and my life as I've lived it. Some of the books are further away from my immediate experience. Others are very close to it. But that's why that's the other thing he said, the finishing of that quote. He said, at night you dream 6 dreams, but are they 6 dreams? One dream prefigures or anticipates the next, or somehow concludes what hasn't yet even been fully dreamed. Then comes the next dream, the corrective of the dream before, the alternative dream, the antidote dream, and so on. So that's what it's like.
There's been so much discussion about the fiction non-fiction, most of which is a bit tedious for you, but I thought there was a quote I'd just like to, from your own book, I'd love you to read, which I think, because this is non-fiction, this is actually, I don't know if it was the beginning of your fascination with the dark elements, but this was the story you wrote for Time magazine, 1993. I think probably many of you here remember the story of little Daniel Valerio, the 2-year-old who was beaten to death. And this is a journalist writing, which is why I'd like you to read the last paragraph.
The last paragraph. Oh, okay. What happened to Daniel Valerio? He was, for those who've forgotten, he was beaten to death by his mother's boyfriend. What happened to Daniel Valerio reflects on us all, on our private and public natures. It stirs up deep fears about ourselves and makes us frightened and ashamed. I don't see how it's possible to contemplate Daniel's story without acknowledging the existence of evil, of something savage that persists in people despite all our enlightenment and our social engineering and our safety nets, something that only philosophy, religion or art can handle, the worm in the heart of the rose.
I just thought that was, though a journalist's article, for which he won a Walkley Award, that is, I would suggest, an author's conclusion, a novelist's conclusion. So do they belong actually far more comfortably together than people think?
What?
The fiction and the non-fiction, the crossing over.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they're on a spectrum. It's not... I used to think there was a fence, between fiction and non-fiction, but now I think they're on a spectrum. You can move along. Of course, that brings a lot of ethical problems.
Difficulties, yes.
Yeah, it does. It creates a lot of difficulties when you're telling a story that sort of belongs to someone else, if stories belong to anyone. That's another question.
Why did you take the chance and write The First Stone as non-fiction? Wouldn't it have saved you bacon a bit if that had been written as a novel?
Well, I don't think it ever crossed my mind to write it as a novel, because I was just furious. I mean, that was a personal emergency of... I thought, is this what feminism has become? This great movement that liberated me from whatever I was not free of back then. Don't get me started, but... But no, I was sort of furious, and I wanted to get to the bottom of the story, I think. It was much more of a hunt, really.
Did you have any idea of the size of the bomb you were detonating?
Not until fairly late in the piece. I just thought there was a lot of craziness in the story, and I think I picked up on some of that craziness. I mean, you get into a story like that and it rubs off on you. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. But then, as I got towards the end, I remember I wrote some rather red rag.
You were furious?
Yeah, I was furious, and I wanted to flash the red rag in front of a certain type of feminist, and of course they lowered their heads and went for me with their sharp horns, and. That was okay. It was ghastly while it was happening, unbelievably horrendous. But, gee, it certainly, it certainly smartened me up. I thought, okay, it taught me to fight. I thought I had to learn to fight. I remember when I first started writing, I read somewhere that Simone de Beauvoir said, "I write in order to be loved." And I thought, oh yes, so do I. And then, But then when The First Stone happened and I got the shit kicked out of me in public, I thought, okay, if that's the way it is out there, I'll get tough.
So you didn't write another full-length book for 9 years?
9? Was it 9?
9.
Well, there was a marriage breakup in between.
But you didn't feel cowed? I mean, you absolutely came out of that thinking, damn you, I will...
Yeah, I came out of it thinking how crazy some people get. And how naive I'd been, and I thought I'd have to get smarter. I'd have to get not just tougher and meaner, but I'd have to.
What was your mistake? What
in the book?
I mean, you said that how naive I'd been. What was the naivety?
The naivety was not quite seeing the madness in some of the people involved in the story. I think taking people at face value instead of. I mean, I haven't got I'm not very tactical. I'm not a tactical thinker. Or a strategic thinker, and I just sort of... I remember Jack Hibbard saying to me years ago when I got upset about something someone said to me, he said, don't react frontally, use the bastards. And I didn't really know what he meant, but now I know what he means. And I learned the best thing I learned was how to keep my temper, because I am on a bit of a hair trigger, and I just learned how to keep my temper in public and how to keep thinking. I mean, I was on Ramona's show, and at the end of I almost burst into tears. And when I listened to it afterwards, I was furious with myself. I could hear my voice trembling like this, and I thought, you bloody wimp, get real. You know, they're out there.